In this day and age, with our nation's institutions and foundational principles being attacked daily by the president, from consistent and ugly attacks on the media to calls for violence against protesters to regular ugly attacks on new Americans, minorities, immigrants, people seeking political asylum, to demonizing opposition voices, to questioning the Americanness of those who oppose Trump's policies and calling them traitors, to Republican leaders who for years have stood up for free market principles and values, conservative budgets, traditional family values, and standing up to totalitarian regimes across the world, when they openly refuse to call out the president in public and in many cases enable him. In the age of Trump, what is up is down and what is down is up. Is it any wonder that it's becoming harder and harder to find civility in our public sphere? Cynical pollsters and political professionals will fiercely advocate for the importance of slinging mud to score points and depress overall turnout. Talking heads shout over each other on television talk shows, and angry outbursts quickly take on outsized influence by going viral on social media. And it's not just one side. Is it okay that the far left sometimes have activists who've been regularly calling out Trump appointees in restaurants and in public places? Where's the line drawn, and when is it crossed? How do we combat these trends that substitute volume and coarseness for reflection and reason? How do we get back to the ideals that brought our founders together to form the United States, the ideals of the Enlightenment, the ideals and writings of, and ideas really, of Rousseau and Locke and Hobbes, the foundational theories of education, equality, reason, and freedom that men like Madison and Jefferson used to form our nation? No one would say that I'm not a strong Democrat, but one of my heroes is former U.S. Senator John Warner. He would say all the time to me that he was an American first, a Virginian second, a military man third, and then he was a Republican. He would say that we all run vigorous campaigns, but we have to come together for what's best for the nation in Virginia. And so when he was sort of the senior person in the U.S. congressional delegation, it was fascinating to see how much the congressional delegation did together, how much they worked together. My old boss and friend, Tim Kaine, when I worked for him when he was governor of Virginia, used to say that we all agree on 88% of the issues. It's that 12% that keep us apart. And if we focus on the 88%, we can actually do a lot of good for the Commonwealth. Today, of all days, on the 17th anniversary of 9/11, it's more important than ever that we put aside our differences and remember what makes us all human, what makes us all American. And remember that as Americans, we always come together in times of national crisis. We also need to remember that politics is inherently acrimonious, but that what makes us American, what makes us human, always makes us remember the better angels of our nature. Look at the difference between Congress and the House of Delegates. Congress back in 1994 started having 3-day-a-week sessions. Congress a few years ago passed a total of around 60 bills. They bottled up postal naming legislation. But in the House of Delegates in Virginia, in the General Assembly, we pass around 800 bills a session in just 2 months or 6 weeks, depending on the year. And to do that, really, relationships are key. You can oppose each other vigorously during a campaign, but sometimes the bonds of friendship enable us to see the inherent goodness of folks. And I like to say that we all want Virginia to be a better place. We just have different dreams about how to get there. And if we can accept that and respect that in others, well then we know that even though we might oppose each other on certain issues, we'll come together on other issues. One organization that I think is doing a lot to help us in this regard and to help bring civility and respect and bipartisanship, as well as a nuanced understanding of public policy, is the Sorensen Institute for Political Leadership. It teaches us that politics plays a role, but we shouldn't lose sight of the real issue, which is always good government for the people of Virginia. James Madison can teach us a great deal on this. He wasn't the loudest person, he wasn't the most eloquent orator, but his persuasive power sort of came from his preparation and his critical thinking. He did his homework, and he backed up all of his points with historical examples and solid reasoning and arguments. So debate is important. It can cause people to examine their assumptions and perspectives, especially if it's based on facts, evidence, and reasoning. Madison himself evolved in his thinking over time about issues, so that at one point he was opposed to the Bill of Rights, and then he was for the Bill of Rights. We need to be open-minded. We need to be actively listening to each other, and we need to be open to learning from each other. And that's what the key leadership skills are for people if we're going to move forward, if we're going to get out of this era of being not civil and to embrace civility. Because you need that now more than ever in our legislative sphere, especially when others rush to judgment or respond emotionally to situations without all the facts. You need to be actively listening. You need to be coming at the facts. You need to be accepting what's true. And if we model these kinds of positive attributes as leaders, over time we can create conditions where relationships can grow and we can learn from each other. So some of the things that I would focus on is we need to be respectful of differing opinions. We need to embrace facts and data and debate. We need to be more focused on outcomes and quality than on scoring political points. We need to be interactive. What I mean by that is more engagement with everyone, not just in the narrow fields that social media create for us. It's fascinating. Sometimes if I'll look at my Facebook feed when a big news day has happened, I'm getting a very unique perspective on what that situation is. And I'll look at one of my colleagues from Southside Virginia who's a Republican, and I'll look at their Facebook feed. And it's as if the world is completely different. We need to be more nuanced in our understanding of public policy and how we approach things. We have to be engaged all the time, not just during election season. We need to be open to transparency. We need to be open to people seeing the actions we're taking and how we're taking them. We have to be encouraging of differing stakeholders' voices. And we need to reflect and be open to diversity. We need to acknowledge the value of opposing positions and points of view. We need to fact check. Sometimes the information that we see or we encounter online, it might make us feel one way, but a lot of the times it's simply false. We need to keep an open mind to those views and an open heart to those who espouse them that we might not agree with. And we need to be aware of our need to be right and how this sometimes inhibits debate. It's about disagreeing without being disagreeable. It's about having the grace to understand that, as I like to say, as I said before, we all want Virginia or the country to be a better place. We just have different dreams about how to get there. And so if we hearken back to that, and we understand that what binds us together as Americans and as human beings is stronger than any partisan divide, then I'm always hopeful about where we're going as a country and where we're going as a Commonwealth. And we've been there before. We've constantly had acrimonious periods in our political discourse. We've constantly had acrimonious periods in our history, and we've gotten through it. And we will get through these times as well. I am ever hopeful.